My 4-year-old daughter Lily collapsed right in front of me, and my own sister looked at her gasping on the floor and said, "I don't babysit emergencies." Imagine this. It's a normal Sunday afternoon. The smell of roasted chicken is still in the air. I'm Emily, 30 years old, a single mom who's been barely holding it together. I'm standing in my dad's living room, screaming for help, while my little girl is turning blue on the carpet. Lily is only 4. She's the sweetest, most energetic kid you've ever seen, until that moment. One second she was laughing and playing with her toys, the next she clutched her chest, her eyes rolled back, and she dropped like a rag doll. I dropped to my knees. "Somebody help me. Call 911. I shouted. My older sister Sarah, 35, always perfectly dressed, always too busy, barely glanced down. She checked her watch like we were wasting her precious time and said the words that still make my blood run cold. "I don't babysit emergencies, Emily. Handle your own kid." Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Then my own father, 62, retired, sitting in his favorite recliner just 10 feet away, stood up, looked at his granddaughter struggling to breathe, and walked straight out the front door without saying a single word. I was alone, shaking, doing CPR on my baby while my family acted like it was an inconvenience. You're probably wondering, how did we even get here? Why would any family be this cruel? And what was really wrong with Lily? For the past 6 months, Lily and I had been living with my dad after my divorce left us broke. I thought family would help. Instead, every time I mentioned Lily's strange episodes, the sudden dizziness, the trouble breathing, Sarah would roll her eyes and say I was just being dramatic. Dad would mutter, "You spoil that girl. She just wants attention." But this time was different. This wasn't a small episode. This was life-threatening. I was crying, begging, trying to keep Lily conscious, when the front door slammed open. My strict Aunt Margaret, my dad's older sister, 58, retired nurse, the one person in this family who never took nonsense, stormed in. She took one look at Lily, knelt down beside me, and pulled out her phone. She made one call. The person on the other end answered. Aunt Margaret's voice was ice cold. "It's happening. Get here now." And that's when I saw it. Pure panic flash across my sister Sarah's face for the first time. While my daughter Lily was fighting for every breath on that living room floor, my sister Sarah was still checking her watch like she had somewhere better to be. Aunt Margaret was on her knees now, helping me with CPR. Her hands were steady, her voice calm but urgent. "Stay with us, sweetheart," she whispered to Lily. But my mind was spinning. How could this be happening? I had warned them. Over and over. Let me take you back a few months, so you understand just how toxic this house had become. After my divorce, I had no choice but to move back in with Dad. Money was tight, and I thought, stupidly, that family would step up. Sarah would swing by once in a while, always bragging about her big real estate deals, always child-free and proud of it. She'd look at Lily and say things like, "Kids are so exhausting, aren't they? Good thing I don't have that problem." But Lily started having these episodes. Small at first. She'd get dizzy after meals, complain she couldn't breathe properly, turn pale. I took her to the doctor. They suspected a severe allergy, but needed more tests. Every time I brought it up at home, Dad would grunt from his recliner. "You're making her soft, Emily. When we were kids, we didn't run to the doctor for every little thing." Sarah was worse. She'd laugh. "Your daughter's just dramatic, like you. Stop looking for problems." I felt so alone. Every night, I'd lie awake wondering if I was a bad mother. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe it really was nothing. But that Sunday, it became everything. Lily's lips were turning blue. I was sobbing, doing chest compressions with shaking hands while Sarah stood by the door, purse on her shoulder. "I have a big listing appointment in 30 minutes, she said flatly. "I can't stay for this drama." Dad had already left. I heard his car start outside. That's when Aunt Margaret hung up the phone. She looked at Sarah with eyes like steel. "They're on their way. Ambulance will be here in minutes. And so is someone else." Sarah froze. "Who did you call?" Aunt Margaret didn't answer right away. She just wiped sweat from Lily's forehead and said quietly, "Someone who should have been called a long time ago." At that exact moment, we heard sirens getting closer. But the real shock wasn't the ambulance. It was the look of pure fear that crossed my sister's face when Aunt Margaret added, "And Richard is coming too." The ambulance lights painted the whole street red and blue before I could even catch my breath. Paramedics burst through the door like a SWAT team. They took over CPR, slapped an oxygen mask on Lily, and within seconds had her strapped to a gurney. I climbed into the back of the ambulance with her, still shaking, while Aunt Margaret rode shotgun up front. The last thing I saw before the doors slammed was Sarah standing on the porch, arms crossed, looking annoyed that her Sunday had been interrupted. In the ER, everything moved at warp speed. Doctors swarmed Lily. They pumped her full of epinephrine and ran tests. I stood there in my stained Sunday clothes, holding her tiny hand, praying harder than I'd ever prayed in my life. Then the doctor pulled me aside. "Anaphylactic shock," he said. "Severe." This wasn't random. "Has she been exposed to anything unusual today?" I told him about the family lunch, the special roasted chicken Dad always made with his secret recipe. The one I had begged them to stop serving because Lily kept getting sick after it. The doctor's face tightened. "This is her third episode in 6 weeks, according to the records your aunt brought us." "Why wasn't this reported earlier?" That's when Aunt Margaret stepped in. She pulled out her phone and showed the doctor a folder she'd been keeping, dates, symptoms, photos of Lily's pale face after meals, even copies of the 2 doctor visits I'd taken her to that I had begged the family to acknowledge. "I've been tracking this for weeks," Aunt Margaret said quietly. "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad until today." Before I could process what she was saying, the ER doors flew open. Sarah stormed in, Dad right behind her. Both of them looked furious. "What the hell is this circus?" Sarah snapped. "You always have to make everything about you and your kid, Emily. I have clients waiting." Dad pointed a finger at me. "If you get evicted from my house because of this drama, don't come crying to me. I warned you about spoiling that girl." Aunt Margaret stepped between us, her voice low but steel hard. "Before either of you says another word, you should know I didn't just call the ambulance." She paused, eyes locked on them. "I called Richard." Sarah's face drained of all color. And at that exact moment, the hospital room door opened behind her. The hospital room door opened, and the one person my sister and father feared most stepped inside like he owned the place. Richard, Dad's older brother. 60 years old, sharp suit, sharper eyes. The uncle I hadn't seen in 12 years because he and Dad had a blowout fight over money and never spoke again. He was also the family lawyer, the one Grandpa trusted to handle the entire estate. Sarah's face went ghost white. Dad actually took a half step backward. Richard didn't even look at them at first. He walked straight to Lily's bed, checked her monitors, then turned to me with a gentle nod. "Emily, you did good holding it together." Margaret called me the second she suspected this was deliberate neglect. Aunt Margaret stepped forward and handed him a thick folder. "Everything's in here. Texts, doctor reports, security footage from the house camera Dad installed for security. 2 weeks ago, Lily had another episode after Sunday lunch. Emily begged him to drive her to the ER. He told her to stop overreacting and went back to his TV. Richard flipped through the pages, his expression hardening. Grandpa's will had a very specific clause, one nobody wanted to talk about after he died. It says the entire inheritance, the house, the savings, the investments, gets redistributed if any blood relative shows willful neglect of a minor child in their care. He looked straight at Dad and Sarah. "You two just triggered it." Sarah exploded. "This is insane. You can't do this. It's Emily's kid, her drama." Richard cut her off, calm as ice. "The ambulance report, the ER records, and the footage all prove you both knew Lily had a severe allergy to the peanut oil Dad uses in his secret recipe. Emily warned you repeatedly. You ignored her. You refused medical help. That's not drama. That's endangerment." Dad's mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood there stunned, still holding Lily's hand as she slept peacefully for the first time in hours. Everything I'd been screaming about for months was finally being laid out in black and white by the one person they couldn't bully or ignore. Sarah spun on me, desperate. "This is your fault. You brought this on us." Richard closed the folder with a soft click. "Actually," he said, "the papers are already signed. The house and every penny now belong to Emily and Lily." Richard's words hung in the air like a judge's final gavel. The house and every penny now belong to Lily and me. For the first time in months, I felt my knees actually buckle, not from fear this time, but from pure, overwhelming relief. I sank into the chair beside Lily's bed and let the tears come. Real tears. Not the desperate ones I'd cried on the living room floor. These were the kind that wash everything clean. The doctor stepped back in right then and gave us the full picture, the logical truth I'd been screaming for months. Lily's collapse wasn't random. It was a severe allergy to peanut oil. The exact ingredient Dad had been secretly using in his family recipe, chicken, every single Sunday for years. I had begged them to stop. I had shown them the doctor's notes. Sarah had laughed it off as Emily being dramatic again. Dad had called it spoiling the child. They knew. They just didn't care. Lily woke up an hour later. Her little voice was hoarse but strong. "Mommy, I feel better." I pulled her into my arms and held her like I'd never let go. In that moment, every doubt I'd ever had about being a good mother vanished. Someone finally had my back. Someone finally believed us. But the story didn't end in that hospital room. The consequences hit fast and hard. Within 48 hours, Richard filed the paperwork. Sarah was completely cut from the will, and she's now facing a civil suit for child endangerment. Her big real estate clients started dropping her the moment the story leaked in our small town. The same woman who once bragged about never having kid drama now can't even book a listing appointment. Dad was given 30 days to move out of the house he'd lived in for 40 years. He lost his primary asset, his savings share, and every ounce of respect from the extended family. The group chat that once sided with him went dead silent. A few relatives even reached out to me with apologies I never asked for. 6 weeks later, Lily and I stood in that same living room, now ours. Sunlight poured through the windows. Lily, healthy and laughing, wore her new medical alert bracelet as she helped Aunt Margaret plant flowers in the front yard. Margaret looked over at me and smiled, that rare, proud smile she never gave easily. I looked straight into the camera I'd set up for this final moment and said, "Blood doesn't make family. Sometimes the people who save you are the ones you least expect." Lily ran over, grabbed my hand, and we stepped into our new beginning, together, safe, and finally